Brock Purdy is going to get paid. The question isn't whether or not he deserves it, but how much he's going to get. Quarterbacks are expensive, and he's played well at an insane discount for the 49ers so far. He deserves his bag, and he's going to get it, but what makes sense for the 49ers to give him, and what makes sense for Purdy to actually accept? It sounds like a deal will be done at some point, even if it's in the near future maybe. But Niners general manager John Lynch does expect it to get done nonetheless. The question is when, how much, and how long. The length, and more importantly, the amount, is going to potentially control the 49ers' future. Purdy has succeeded with good players around him so far, but what happens when he's getting paid so much San Francisco can't pay the talented weapons? Can Purdy still win then? I doubt it. And last year, we kind of saw that no. There's no doubt that Brock Purdy has been super cheap and is slated to make only $5 million next season. His next deal is going to be a hell of a lot more than that. Could be even 10 times more. But how much will he actually get? Well, the 49ers aren't coming off of a great season where he led the way like previous years. They went 6-11, and it was just very disappointing. That being said, the 49ers were the single most injured team in the league. Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, Nick Bosa, Dre Greenlaw, Talanoa Hufanga, Jordan Mason, Mitch Wisnowski, all important guys and all missed significant time during the season. It was going to be tough to succeed with all that, but once they're healthy again, we'll see, although some of those guys are gone. Even Purdy himself missed 2 games last year because of injuries, and the Niners lost both, which shows how important he is. It wasn't a great statistical year for Purdy. He passed for 3,864 yards, 20 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, while completing 65.9% of his passes. He had to play a bit of hero ball and had career highs across the board rushing with 66 attempts for 323 yards and a team-high 5 touchdowns. Yes, he was the Niners' leader in rushing touchdowns with only 5. That's not great. Purdy essentially had to do it all, and that's easier said than done. But what really matters is what he can do and how well he can perform when he does have the pieces around him to succeed. And I think at this point, he's proven that he can. If he gets paid big, it won't be because of last season. It's going to be because of what he's accomplished over the last 3 years. Brock Purdy certainly wasn't expected to be important as a rookie after he was Mr. Irrelevant, the 262nd pick of the 7th round of the 2022 draft out of Iowa State. He obviously wasn't expected to have much of a role as a 7th round rookie. The 49ers were making the switch over to Trey Lance after he was the 3rd overall pick in 2021 and got a season to sit. He was taking the reins from Jimmy Garoppolo, but Jimmy G stuck around in San Francisco, and it's a good thing he did. Lance ended up suffering an ankle injury in just week 2 of the season and missed the rest of the year. Garoppolo took over, and he didn't miss a beat. The Niners were still pretty good. They sat at 7-4 before facing the Dolphins in week 13. Well, in the first quarter, Garoppolo went down with a foot injury, and suddenly it was up to the rookie, Brock Purdy. He played well enough. He threw for 210 yards and 2 touchdowns, becoming the first Mr. Irrelevant to ever throw a touchdown in a regular season game. I remember personally, I was at Buffalo Wild Wings at the time when Garoppolo went down, and I was already going through the possible guys the 49ers could sign for the rest of the year. But no, they stuck with Purdy, who continued to play well. He started the last 5 games of the season, winning them all. He was the NFC Rookie of the Month for December and January. In all, he ended up throwing for 1,374 yards, 13 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. He was surprisingly decent, and the 49ers got the number 2 seed in the postseason after winning the NFC West. Winning in the regular season is cute, sure, but the postseason is when it matters. We all know that, and Purdy didn't miss much of a step at all. He threw 3 touchdowns and rushed for 1 against the Seahawks in the wild card in a win. The Niners beat the Cowboys to make the NFC Championship, and then that NFC Championship game was quite iconic and even resulted in an NFL rule change. Purdy hurt his right elbow, which ended up being a UCL tear. Josh Johnson came in to replace him and then suffered a concussion, forcing Purdy to come back in and only throw 2 passes because he couldn't really throw the football and really just had to hand the ball off because it's literally all he could do. It was a tough way to lose. And now teams can have an emergency quarterback in case the backup also gets hurt because of that. Even with the brutal end, it was still a great way to start his career. Purdy then just had to back it up and prove that it was real, and that is exactly what he did in 2023. Brock Purdy recovered from his elbow injury that he suffered in the NFC Championship just in time to be named the starter for 2023, which even resulted in Trey Lance getting the boot and getting traded to the Cowboys despite being a 3rd overall pick that the Niners used on him. Purdy had a lot to prove, and he had to show that he wasn't just a one-year wonder, and that is exactly what he did. The 49ers kept winning and were 5-0 to start the season, including a 4-touchdown game against the Cowboys. Then it got a bit rocky. The Niners lost 3 straight, and Purdy didn't miss any time, but he did have a little period there where he was experiencing concussion symptoms. It was odd, and after a 3-game skid, it was worth wondering if Purdy was the guy or if his Linsanity run had ended, but it didn't. The 49ers then won 6 straight games as Purdy threw for 3 touchdowns against the Jaguars and Buccaneers and 4 touchdowns against the Eagles. The Niners lost to a really good Ravens team and MVP Lamar Jackson in the winning streak, but then beat Washington in Week 17 to sit at 12-5 and was able to rest starters to end the year and have the NFC first round bye. Purdy finished the regular season with 4,280 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, and rushed for 2 touchdowns and 144 yards. His 9.6 yards per attempt and 113 quarterback rating both led the league. He was great, and it carried right over to the postseason. In a rainy wildcard round, the Niners won after a late 12-play, 69-yard game-winning drive. Then in the NFC Championship, the 49ers trailed 24-7 to the Lions, and it didn't matter. They came back to win 34-31, erasing a 17-point halftime deficit and made the Super Bowl where they had to face the big bad Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes. In that big game, Purdy was 23 of 38 for 255 yards and a touchdown as the 49ers lost 25-22 in dramatic, heartbreaking overtime fashion. It wasn't the end they had hoped for, but it did prove that a guy who was drafted in the 7th round like Purdy could be the quarterback for a Super Bowl contender. Sure, the next season wasn't as good, but Purdy earned his bag back in 2023. Whether or not the 49ers should extend Brock Purdy is pretty simple. They should, and he deserves it. How much is the big issue? The 49ers have had the benefit of a good quarterback on a rookie deal, which has allowed them to pay a ton of other players, but that time is over. They traded away an underperforming Deebo Samuel to not have to deal with the last year of his contract, and they lost both Dre Greenlaw and Talanoa Hufanga in free agency, both of which are linebackers who are now with the Broncos. The 49ers just couldn't spend as much as they normally have, and that's because they have to pay Purdy. It could be $50 to $60 million from reports. Sure, that's a lot of money, but you can't let him walk. And if they did, other teams would come calling for him. If you can win games, you're worth the money. And even if the 49ers didn't do that last year super consistently, Purdy has proven that he can be the guy. It's going to be tough losing a lot of weapons like Deebo and then having to pay other dudes like Brandon Ayuk, who got paid last offseason, or George Kittle and Christian McCaffrey. Purdy has definitely benefited from those guys in his offense, but I'd argue that you can also say that about any quarterback and the guys around them. The 49ers are in a tough spot with a pretty big decision to make and trying to keep that money figure down as low as possible, but they just might not be able to. You can't not pay Brock Purdy. At this point, it feels like Kyle Shanahan has handcuffed his career to Purdy and that he's the guy. That doesn't mean it's the right decision. We already know what it looks like when Purdy has dudes hurt, and it's not a great situation, and obviously last year wasn't pretty. That being said, he helped the 49ers get to a Super Bowl already. You can't let him walk, but if his contract is huge and it cash straps the Niners to the point of not being a contender anymore, well, then it's just going to really sting that they couldn't win a ring with such a talented roster, whether it was Brock Purdy starting or even when Jimmy Garoppolo also lost to the Chiefs.